mental health and addictions. Their day-to-day lives are very impacted. We are funded by many ministries in the government, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Children's Services, and several others. And we tend to hire our clinical team, so psychiatry, nursing, social work, OT, and we partner with many of our providers. We have a great relationship with our police, and we have crisis workers embedded right with Guelph Police, as many of you know. We work with our child welfare partners, our education partners, but certainly most importantly tonight, we want to focus on the partnership we have with the Guelph Neighbourhood Support Coalition. Just to give you context in terms of numbers, CMHA serves about 20,000 people a year, about 12 to 15,000 within Guelph. We get about 5,000 calls a month into our Here 24/7 service. So that is our service that accesses mental health addiction and crisis services. 5,000 calls a month into that service. So that speaks to the need that we have in our community, which is never ending. Once people get through Here 24/7 and get linked to services, right now in Guelph, Wellington, and in Waterloo Region, we have about 3,500 people waiting. So they're waiting for psychiatry, they're waiting for support coordination, they're waiting for intensive services. And their needs are, as I mentioned, very significant. So there isn't near enough to go around for the need that is out there. So in terms of our relationship with the Guelph Neighbourhood Support Coalition, we have an amazing partnership. Of many of the folks, both Kim and Alicia, and you're going to hear from Barb McPhee shortly, we have an amazing bridge between the formal system and the informal system. As I've mentioned, we get many callers into Here 24/7, but we get thousands of people that don't call us. People that are struggling with stigma, struggling with histories of trauma, for many legitimate reasons, don't trust the formal service system. We know they're not going to reach out to us, so we need to find a way to reach in. And through the Guelph Neighbourhood Support Coalition, we have that. You've heard some of that tonight. We have people out there who are neighbors, who are friends, who are workers, who we can leverage those relationships. They can say to their neighbor, I know, you're really struggling. I've tried to support you. I think you need more than what our neighborhood can do for you. I know this great person at CMHA. I know this great program. Why don't I call them and introduce you? Through that relationship, through that trusting relationship, we're able to connect with that person. We're able to go and meet them at the neighborhood. We're able to intervene at times of crisis. We're able to engage that person in our services. Those are people that we would not see, we would not hear from. So with that GNSC support and through that trusted relationship, we're able to meet those folks in their home community where they feel safe and to slowly build that relationship so that we can engage them in service. And I can tell you there's a lot of people out there quietly suffering who are really ill. Through the GNSC support, we're able to reach those folks. We're also able to train the staff who work at the GNSC. So through our Safe Talk program, through our ASSIST program, which is a suicide prevention program, we're able to provide that capacity building for them because they're there. They're engaged in those conversations, in those relationships, and they need to know when to flag risk and when to call us in as well so that we can build that partnership. There is a significant power imbalance between the formal system and the informal system. That's just the way it is. We're never going to fix that power imbalance, but we can bridge it. And we really feel strongly with the relationship that we've built with GNSC. It's an amazing bridge and an amazing partnership. So why do we need more? Aaron has articulated that really well. And we are funded well from our ministries, but there isn't near enough, as I've mentioned. We can't rely on the formal system to meet the needs that are in the community. And we're never going to have enough psychiatrists, enough nurses, enough social workers. There just isn't enough to go around. Mental health is everywhere. And actually through a lot of the campaigns out there, Bell Talk, other kinds of programs, we are slowly reducing the stigma. There's still lots more out there, but we are seeing more and more need and it's presenting itself, which is awesome and terrifying at the same time, because we know we're not even at the tip of the iceberg in terms of meeting that need. We need to build our community. This investment is actually an investment in our community. It's not in our healthcare system, because we need to partner with our healthcare system, but it really is an investment in our system and in our community. And I'm really excited about that and what we can do together.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for the delegation for Helen? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Barb, you are up next. And Rochelle, I believe, is... Yes, they are. Okay. Good evening, Barb.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Over to you.
It is with much gratitude that I stand here tonight, first of all, thanking you all for what you do for this great city, and to tell you why you should invest $100,000 in the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition. My name is Barb McPhee, and I have invested 20 years or so working and volunteering in the GNSC, and it has been the GNSC that has molded my last 20 years. I was born and raised in Guelph into generational poverty, coming from a family of 8, where there were only one income, supporting the household. I thought life was normal until I reached junior high school and was not able to go to school outings or trips because we were poor. Things in my life became very simple, and we learned to live with what we had, not try to think about what we didn't have. One thing but we did have that cost nothing was a great supportive neighborhood, family, and friends. Today I still live in Guelph and still live in poverty, and still the one thing that I have that costs nothing is the great support of neighborhoods, staff, and friends of the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition. I left the family home when I was 21, got married, had 2 children, and for the next 17 years I struggled in alcoholic and mentally abusive relationship, always trying to keep from going hungry and avoiding the next eviction. I spent those years with my father's words, "You made your bed, you lie in it," constantly edging me on. Finally, there was no bed to lie in. I had enough and got divorced. What followed was stressful times of trying to find a stable home for my kids, keep them fed and clothed, all the while fighting the systems and refusing to go on social assistance. I was lucky to have been placed in a townhouse in the, in the Onward Willow neighborhood, and at the same time had met up with my new partner, who also was raising 3 children. This seemed to be a turning point in my life, as shortly after moving into the Willow Road complex, I had a hip replacement and was unable to work, and the Onward Willow Center convinced me to volunteer on the front desk answering phones, and that was the whole new start to my life. Being part of this wonderful neighborhood gave me the trainings, confidence, and access to programs that helped me and my children to become community leaders in our neighborhood. I was able to be part of the creation of the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition, as well as follow it through all the transitions and phases that it has taken now that it has landed me here today. As I slowly graduated into my senior years, my life was building a mentally dark side that was continuing to create gray moments and bouts of depression that were getting harder and harder to overcome as my life was filling with many disappointments. Losing my partner to cancer, he was just 51, and the most incredible person I'd ever met. Suffering from a few medical issues that tried to slow me down, and being homeless for 3 years from the age of 58 to 61. Not such a strange thing how sleeping in your car, couch surfing, or basement crawling can be so dark and lonely. But as it turned out, I did not need to use the services of an expensive counselor or a therapist, and it was a wonderful, caring GNSC staff that took the time from their own lives to allow me to share my fears, talk out my dreams and aspirations, and convince me that I had so many gifts to offer that the work of the past 20 years of my life should not be wasted, and that I should focus on how I'd been able to change the lives of others, and did I really have a good reason to give up. Volunteering and working in the GNC has given me the tools to become a leader in this wonderful city and made it easy for me to be an advocate for many individuals and families along the way, as well as be part of so many wonderful organizations, such as the Poverty Task Force, the SEED, the POD, the Peas in the Pod, the Welcome Initiative of the Waterloo Wellington Lynn, the Holiday Bureau, participating in this backpack program, and of course, the North End Harvest Market. I still live in Guelph, I still live in poverty, and the one thing that still costs nothing is the support of neighborhood groups, staff, friends of the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition. And to be totally honest, what I've been able to bring to the table over the past few years is worth far more than $100,000. And if you multiply that by the many, many, many community leaders that are growing in the neighborhood groups today, you are getting a great return on your investment.
Great, thank you very much, Barb. Is there any questions for Barb at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much. Rochelle is making her way down, and Marianne is here as well in the wings, if you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rochelle Deveraux, and I am the Executive Director of the Guelph Community Health Center. You've heard a little bit tonight from Jennifer about health equity, and for those who are less familiar with the Community Health Center model of care, it's pretty fair to say that advancing health equity is the core of our business. One of the ways that we do this is by delivering our programs and services in the neighborhoods where people work and play. You've been hearing tonight about what the GNSC does in its own right in our community through their incredible breadth of programs and services, as well as their support. But they also do a lot more for organizations, their community partners, like the Guelph Community Health Center. When I was reflecting on how to best describe this to you, I was reminded of a childhood book of mine called the Together Book, which takes place in another community well known to all of us, Sesame Street. In its pages, the characters are faced with a variety of opportunities, but they're just not able to seize the moment because they're missing some pretty important enablers. One character has a wagon, but he can't enjoy a ride until he has a wheel that's given to him from a friend. Another finds a hill perfect for sledding, but he can't go down until he's offered a sled from a pier. And another has roller skates that are just too loose until a friend that he relies upon offers him an Allen key. That page is always puzzling to my kids. They don't know what the roller skates are or the Allen key. But that's what I can answer for you tonight. To the Guelph CHC, the GNSC is our Allen key. They are our sled. They are our wheel. They enable us to put the community into community development. We have parent outreach workers who are preventing adverse childhood experiences and building a sense of belonging in communities, side by side, Guelph neighborhood support workers, as they advance their work in the community that very own GNSC has gathered. This makes connecting families to programs and supports easier when you provide a warm handoff to someone they know, a familiar face and a familiar space, says one of our parent outreach workers in the Brant neighborhood group. Our Garden Fresh boxes are delivered in the neighborhood group locations across the city, relying on this created infrastructure that the GNSC has brought, bringing accessible and affordable food to our community members. One of our staff spoke about how comfortable residents are accessing this program at the Grange Hill East neighborhood group, so much so that they are now involved as a volunteer. And our Healthy Living peer leaders are pretty pumped about a community rink that they're about to start in the Onward Willow neighborhood group, alongside GNSC, who one of our health promoters said has been instrumental in making this happen and will be taking the lead, helping folks get access to helmets and skates. The GNSC brings the community to enable our community development. The last page on that Sesame Street book says that every day I need a helper, and every day you need one too. There's so much that we can do together. If you help me, I'll help you. What we know too well is that this work cannot be sustained without solid and sustainable investments in the very human resources that make it all possible. It can't happen off the corner of our desk or as an unbearing weight on the back of one or two staff. On behalf of the Guelph CHC, I urge City Council to endorse the GNSC's request for increased base funding.
Great, thank you again for your presentation. Any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much. Marianne is in the front row. Well done. I was told Karen is not here. I believe I'm correct on that. So Brendan, you get ready, okay? Over to you. Thank you for coming.
Hi, my name is Marianne Hensley, and I'm a parent outreach worker with the Guelph Community Health Center, and I'm based out of the Two Rivers neighborhood group. I'm here tonight to read the words of a mom that I support in Two Rivers. Sharing her story shows how effective the partnership with the Health Centre and the GNSC is, as it supports and celebrates the work being done on the ground through the neighbourhood groups and the Parent Outreach Worker program. Many of the positive impacts and connections for this family would not have been possible without this partnership. Working together in the community and with the community, we are able to collectively respond to needs, create opportunities, address barriers, build skills, and foster hope. This partnership recognizes and honors the fact that it often takes many careful hands and relationships to engage some of the most isolated in our neighborhoods. My name is Amanda, and I'm a single mother with 5 beautiful children. I was someone who kept more to myself and focused on my children. I don't have family in Guelph, and I didn't know about my neighborhood group or very many people in my neighborhood. This whole new world began about 5 years ago when the principal at my kids' school introduced me to Marianne, the parent outreach worker in our community. I was a bit hesitant to put myself out there, but I was willing to try. This has been one of the best decisions I have made. Marianne became an advocate for me, and besides our one-on-one meetings to work through family issues and getting the supports in place that we needed, she introduced me to my neighborhood group. She also told me that the health promoters at the GCHC with the neighborhood groups run programming and that they were looking for new members to become healthy living peer leaders. I knew I wanted to get out there more and to try new things, so I went and checked it out. I have now been a peer leader at 2 Rivers for 3 years. During this time, I was able to create and run programs that I thought would help our community. The more I was involved, the more confidence in myself I was gaining, and I was meeting new people. This, in turn, helped me get out of my shell and share my talents. It got to the point that I was confident and comfortable enough that I created and ran an 8-week workshop called Living Within Your Means. Last year, I ran a program called Little Explorers for 4 to 6-year-olds, and I'm always thinking of new programs to run at 2 Rivers. Through Marianne and the neighborhood group, I was introduced to different resources like the Garden Fresh Box, and I've been able to participate in many programs that I would not have known about, such as the Photo Voice and the swim ticket projects with Public Health in the City of Guelph, the Earn a Bike program with the Guelph Police, Adopt a Family through the Children's Foundation, and we were even able to get free tickets to see the Beauty and the Beast play at the Guelph Little Theatre. When you are on a fixed low income, all these things are greatly appreciated because it means that we are able to give our children different experiences that might not have been possible without this help. Because I was connected to Marianne and 2 Rivers, I was then able to get my boys involved, and the older ones started volunteering. The first thing they did was helped out with summer camp. Then they started volunteering at the community dinners and other events, which led them to becoming leaders in training. I also accessed the backpack program for back to school, and not only did my children receive the backpacks, but one of my boys volunteered his time with Marianne and the other community members in 2 Rivers at Hope House to pack the bags. Through all of these programs and opportunities, and through so many more that I haven't mentioned, my whole family has been able to gain new skills, and my self-esteem has increased. I have done additional schooling on my own and have now started my own business to help others called For Mind, Body, and Pocketbook. I now have the knowledge that I can. Without that initial kickstart in the beginning and the ongoing support from my parent outreach worker and my neighborhood group, I'm not sure where I would be at this point. I now have my outer voice, and the true me has finally come out. Life is not easy, but I try to live the best life I can with my children, and I am truly grateful for all the support that I have found through my 2 Rivers community. Neighborhood groups really do make a difference.
Great. Thank you for reading that. Is there any questions? None at this time, so thank you very much. Brendan.
All right.
Welcome.
Why, thank you. Thanks to everybody. I have a bunch of slides. I'm going to skip a bunch because you've heard a lot tonight, and I won't try and bore you anymore. But I want to first recognize the kind of heroic and the courage of people to get up here and tell their stories. And I think that's what I'm most impressed with. And the people here in the audience, it's mostly GNSC folks. it really is a community, and I'm probably the luckiest guy in this city to get to work alongside all these remarkable people, and constantly humbled and amazed by them. So this kind of wordy thing up here for you is one of our charitable goals, and what it really means is that, you know, we all know Guelph's a great city, we all live here and we participate in it, but it's not a great city for everyone. And we know that's for people of color, gender identity, and especially poverty, and where all those things intersect. So what we're trying to do at the coalition is try and center community voice and decision making. Lynn, one of the neighborhood support workers, has often said to me, "Not me without me." And I think what we're doing in this coalition is flipping that script a bit, that the community needs a voice in how and when things happen, and where and why they happen. So that's the beauty of this. And this statement, if you break it down, it really means we want everyone to have the same kind of access to sports and services, and let's say celebration too, right? We all deserve to celebrate each other and be part of this community together and feel like we're part of the community. So you've already heard this. I'll go by quickly. This one, that we've had 3 new neighborhoods join in the last 4 years. We have another group wanting to join and some more wanting to join. So it's an idea that's catching on across the city, and as the city grows, more want to join. And the frank answer is we're kind of capacitied out. We can't really bring on too many more groups at this point. We have 2 new partner organizations, and the neighborhood groups, we've had a couple more add summer camps because they've learned from the other groups how to do that and have seen the benefits of that. You've heard some of the numbers tonight from Aaron, and there's just another look at it. Over the last 5 years, we've seen an increase in all the areas of programming, a huge increase in the number of people participating in the programs at the neighborhood level, and you can see a huge increase in volunteerism and volunteer hours. And you've heard a bit about summer camps tonight, but I just wanted to spend a slide on this. So this is a picture of the Brant Avenue neighborhood. Their carnival, where around end of year they have about 300 people show up. So as Aaron said, those are some of the numbers, but I was impressed that the mayor's dialogue on poverty, and I remember something he said, that he had an aha moment about poverty, and it was about transportation. And what I would say that the neighborhoods groups do more than anyone I've ever seen is offer things in the community. And even if people are living in poverty or having other challenges, that these are walkable things, transportation barriers taken away, programs come to the community, whether it's mental health, whoever it is, that the community has. These are either free or no-cost program or low-cost programs. So we have the opportunity for people to participate in their neighborhood where they couldn't do it anywhere else, whether it's affordability or getting there. So hats off to the mayor and the rest of you for having this conversation around poverty. And as you've seen, what we've seen in the arc of the summer camps is that community members send their kids, the kids get engaged, they have something to do, the parents get a bit of a relief and a break, they get to do the things they need to do and are supported by the groups. And we've seen an arc of kids going to camp, becoming leaders, and then being employed by the GNSC to further that. And we've seen kids go to university, and we've seen them actually become neighborhood support workers in our community and work in other organizations. So there's a lot of skill building in there and a lot of community connection. I guess the other part, that when the GNSC was established, this wasn't really kind of in the SNF for the idea of it, but what's happened is that as the community voice gets unified under the coalition, we're able to amplify that voice, and we're able to go out in the community around food insecurity and issues. You know, a symptom of poverty is food insecurity. And what we're able to do with that is go out and meet with other like-minded organizations and see how we could address it in different, more equitable ways while we're trying to address the root causes. We want to create better programming and better services that reduce the stigma and increase the access. So you can see from this slide that there's a lot happening, and we've created a lot of partnerships. So we're not working alone, and the power of the GNSC is that, to amplify community voice. This slide just kind of shows you that the investment in the GNSC brings back about $2.28 back. We bring that to the table as well. Partner agencies have put in over $120,000, and I can say that the camps cost about $120,000 to $140,000 to run, and that currently isn't part of the allocation we get from the city. That's money we raise on top of that, and you can see the volunteerism. So that's our ask. I'm going to skip fast, and then here's the reason to vote yes. I won't go over them all. You've probably already read them, but what I'd like to do is end in celebration. I'd like to say thank you to the city. I'd like to say thanks for the rich history of your investment and vision in neighborhood groups. And I'd like to say that this is the time that we all should reinvest and put what we've seen. As Aaron said, we've seen more than we expected out of this model, and when I reread the SNF, I'm thinking, wow, we did it, plus some. And I think that it's really an important movement that's happening in our city. And as Aaron said, it's really unique. We've had the city of Hamilton come up and other communities to see what we're doing here and how they can replicate it. So I think you as councillors and as city staff should be super proud of that. And I think this continued investment is just going to see more blossoming and growth. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for coming. We appreciate it. So questions for you is starting with Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Johnson. And thank you to everyone for these remarkable presentations. I think it's a fitting kind of microcosm of what I know to be the value of your group's contribution to the city, to say that what I've witnessed this evening, I have not seen a more inspiring, more passionate presentation to city. And I think that does reflect the commitment that all your volunteers have, that your staff has, and what you're offering to the city. My question, I guess I have a couple of questions. From all we've heard tonight, and it's not just tonight, we're hearing amazing things about the work that you do all the time. You mentioned your ask of $100,000. It kind of feels like, as you've explained, that you've got new members, you're expanding the services you're offering all the time. It feels like that $100,000 is to get you kind of caught up to match your capacity. Would you say that that's correct?
Yeah, and I think sometimes with all the goodwill of everyone at that table to create this organization, sometimes you don't see the unseen costs and benefits. You know, being in the city, you know, this isn't unique to my charity, but Dan and I are the HR department, we're the finance department, we're the legal department, we're the conflict mediation department, we're the, you know, granting department. So we have a lot of different things happening. So I think we were really successful at the start. As Aaron said, they had some early startup money, we got some early grants, and we were able to kind of bridge that gap till now. And you're right, I think it's kind of caught up or meeting where we are right now. This money will go a long way to doing that and helping a little bit of expansion, but this isn't about huge growth. This is about meeting the need. And I would say, I know it's been a long delegation and I respect your time, but the thing is we had to say no to a lot of people because a lot of people wanted to be here, and I think that's another sign of the power of the work that everyone does in the community, that people feel comfortable coming here and want to talk. And we actually had to turn people down, and it was a bit heartbreaking, but that's it. We had a whole giant list of people who wanted to be here, but thanks for that, Councillor Gordon.
Well, thanks. And my next question, I guess I would preface with, it was referred to earlier by Sergeant Hashem about his visit to our, Andy's and myself, our neighborhood and ward meeting, and your organization came up a few times in that conversation as being now an essential force in mitigating those risks and providing that safety in the community. And I'm wondering if in some ways you might be a victim of your own success in that as we see the benefit of what your organization does, it looks like we maybe rely on it more, but it also feels like your funding level might not equate with that increased reliance and increased responsibility in the community. So my more specific question is, you use the word expansion, my last question. If you were to expand as well as catch up to a place that it looked like you could meet those growing needs, get a little ahead of the game, okay. What would that look like in a budget request?
Wow, maybe that's for 2018 to come back after this one. But yeah, I think we're still learning from that. And I think what you said is very true. And I think the power of all these people in the room and the work they do is that we're often seen as that, we've heard a lot about informal, formal tonight, and it's where the GNSC sits in between those places where we are seen as an honest broker or a mediator or a negotiator in those environments where we can bridge those conversations a lot of the time, where we can come to the city or we can come to another organization to have that. And to your council meeting, at your ward meeting, it's the same thing. We often get calls from organizations and services saying, would you mind coming to the next meeting? Because I think community voice is really important in this and a way to address these problems before they get to this crisis moment where people are in an angry room yelling and screaming. Could we, and I think that's the power of the neighborhood groups, that these conversations can be had at a community level in the community spaces much easier and kind of alleviate and bring city into the discussion or partners into the discussion before it gets to this is a crisis in our neighborhood, what are we going to do about it? So I definitely see that, and I see it in lots of ways, and I've met with Alex Goss and Jenny Smith from the CAO's office about, they're developing a new community plan, and they're really excited about working with the GNSC and reaching out in authentic ways to the community and getting community feedback. So again, I think it's an exciting piece of our work that maybe wasn't fully thought out, or who could have imagined this is where we would end up, but the GNSC is seen as an important voice at the table to have these conversations and having meaningful conversations.
Appreciate that, thank you. And I would say the reflection that we need to do as a council in this budget season, based on the great presentations we've made tonight, is I think our job in any budget is to provide our citizens with the best value that we can for their tax dollars. And based on what I've seen tonight, I see no greater opportunity to express that we're getting our value out of what you're doing. And that's why my last question was almost, I don't want you to undersell yourselves too,
sure,
because we don't want you to come back next year saying, well, we're almost caught up. We want you to thrive, because it's already been shown that if you're thriving, then the community is thriving.
Sure, and if there's more, we will gladly accept more. If you're offering more money, then I'm not going to say no to that. But
okay, yeah.
I think this
right.
would allow us to find that capacity, and we're working with public health and a lot of others to better evaluate our work and see where it's going to go. So this would be a wonderful transition moment, and that we could do some more of that work and really come back to you with a fuller picture of that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just in case you didn't know, it's james.gordon@guelph.ca. Councillor Gibson, you are next.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. That was terrific. I want to talk a little bit about process, and I think it's tempting, because these were terrific delegations tonight, by the way. It's tempting to skip to the conclusion, but I do want to cover some process with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you very much to everyone who's just highlighted the value that we're getting out of our GNSC. It's terrific. The request for $100,000, I share a similar comment with a number of our councillors behind the scenes. We always say no surprises, right? We don't want surprises. It's coming to us on delegation night, which I'm not adverse to, but what has been your process to coming to this conclusion? Was there discussions with staff about this request? We start our budget process back in July, so I just wanted to, this was perhaps a question I was going to ask the staff, but I think no better to start with you yourself. Can you help me understand the process?
I'm sure the staff could, I'm not sure who's here from the staff, but yeah, my board chair and a few of us had come as a small committee and met with Dana Evans and Alex Goss probably early summer, but this discussion started last year with our liaison Alex, just starting to talk about what we've talked about tonight and where we think we need to go and what we need to resource to do that. And we've been working with city staff and their advisement on how to do this process. It's pretty new to us as an organization, how to delegate and how to navigate the budgeting process. And it was suggested that we delegate. That from what I understand from staff, we're told that they were given a 0.5 or a 0%. I forget the actual number, but it was pretty either non-existent or super small, and they said, if this was a different scenario and the mandate we were given from council, we would have put it in the budget, but we basically said don't add anything to the budget. So from my understanding, they're super supportive and understood, but they were given don't do it, don't add anything to this budget. So that's why we're here tonight. And they said, this is your opportunity to come and tell them why it should have been in the budget and why an increase is necessary.
Okay, thank you. That, through you, Mr. Mayor, that clears up a little bit for me. Appreciate it. The other question I had was around, you mentioned in your presentation around partners, 10 partner organizations. Can you help me understand, you are an NGO?
We're a registered charity, yeah.
You are a registered charity.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was what I was getting at. So you can offer charitable donations, receipts for tax purposes?
We can, yes.
Okay. The question I had was your donation side. So you have cash or financial contributors. I don't need you to name names, but can you just can you help me understand a little bit about that program, corporate donation drives, or sort of partnership pursuits that you do?
Yeah, I think last year, if you looked at our budget, I think it was around between $40,000 and $50,000 that we got from non-granting, non-institutional monies. And one of those, we started a new fundraiser, and we've just kind of solicited as best we can. But again, in the world of charity, in the world we've described today, it's very difficult we don't have a fundraiser, which I know other organizations may have a person dedicated to that. So it is a challenge, and it's a challenge to do the work, create the organization, while you're also out there trying to find those types of donations. So, that may sound like a cop-out, but I hope it isn't. That, the challenge has been, when we took over this organization, myself and our board, there was a lot of building to do. We became a registered charity. There weren't any policies and procedures in place. The first year or two was about trust building. The neighborhood groups rightfully like, where are we going now? What is this about? So there was a lot of infrastructure to build, not only in building budgets and policies and procedures, but also building trust. So I have to say, in my daily kind of pie chart of ability, there's not a lot to dedicate to fundraising and knocking on doors and fundraising campaigns, because they're pretty decently labor intensive, those things.
Thanks very much. I didn't mean to set you up on that question.
No, that's okay. I'm happy to answer it.
I appreciate the struggle that it is to fundraise, so I appreciate that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson.
So we're Alt.
Thank you very much, Mayor Guthrie. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, for your presentation and for actually, I believe, organizing all the presentations. I think the suggestion to delegate was a fabulous one. It provided certainly me, and I think many other people, with a tremendous understanding of the depth of activities that the Neighborhood Support Coalition is involved within. I can tell you that I was not bored. I don't think anybody was, despite the fact you might think that you're boring. You're not. There are a couple of very controversial... I'm
glad, Phil. Thanks. I'm glad you like me. It feels...
You're welcome.
At a personal level, that means a lot to me.
You're just a big old bear. Okay. Serious questions that I want to raise, and they're uncomfortable questions, too. You made reference to the Neighborhood Support Coalition and its support for people of color and those with issues of gender identity. I was wondering if you could break that down a bit, because they're serious issues. And me... being a retired white guy with a reasonable pension, might not be able to identify clearly how significant those are. I was wondering, could you please go into some depth on those?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, as a white privileged male and leading an organization that distributes money, there's a power imbalance there as well. I guess what we've learned when we had some more flexibility, we had an equity coordinator in our organization. And that kind of bubbled out of the neighborhood groups, that an equity committee formed, and that committee started to inform our work, in that from the policy end to the discussion end. We ran a storytelling series around personal stories around that. Coming in January, we're running an equity all-day conference, and pulling on the strengths of all our partner organizations, the people we work with, like Arch, the Guelph Community Health Center, the Drug Strategy. That what we're trying to do within our organization is to further that dialogue, so that people have a greater understanding what power and privilege is and the inequities in our society. And I think what the beauty that we have as a community voice organization is that we can also bring that discussion to our partner organizations and the service organizations. And I think many of them do a tremendous job, but we're lucky enough to hear the feedback on the ground when that doesn't work, and when that does break down, and where those barriers are, and where those things are, So we, again, are that middle between formal and informal, where we can have those either one-on-one discussions with organizations, or that we can do a communal training together around that and have those discussions. And the one other thing that we'd done as an organization, Isomi Henry was our equity coordinator. She created a training called Creating Communities of Difference. And it was a two-part training that was free to everyone in the coalition. And it was around that. It was around the introductory conversation, because many of us are at very different points in the spectrum of that dialogue and understanding those things. And that was around staff and was offered to our partners. And now Alicia Arnold, who is here tonight, has been training to take that over. So she'll be continuing that work within the coalition.
Okay. Just so there is, am I to understand, or perhaps I do understand, I'm not certain, that there is a correlation between poverty, alienation, race, ethnicity, culture, and gender identity, and we're seeing that in the Neighborhood Support Coalition?
I think we do, and I think the term, if people haven't heard it, is called intersectionality, that you can be someone experiencing poverty and you can be someone experiencing gender discrimination or racism. And then, you know, imagine that compounding effect when those different identities intersect. So we're trying to have that bigger discussion around, you know, we've talked about racism, we've talked about poverty, but there's again strata and intersections within that. It's not just you're poor, you're also poor and racialized. And that creates a whole different stigma and a whole different set of challenges. So we've tried to start it at a very kind of, an early kind of one-on-one conversation, and then keep graduating that conversation so that those, you know, they're not even nuanced, but to some of us, right, those larger nuanced conversations where those things intersect, and how can we address that as a community.
Okay. It astounds me, actually, that the kind of budget that you're asking for, which is only 0.02.5% of the city's budget, is dealing with such a myriad of issues and has such tremendous support. We're dealing with much significantly larger envelopes that we don't get a person out for, and you've got half of Guelph out here for $100,000. I appreciate that, but it gets back to following up on Councillor Gibson's issue, which was really my question number one. I was wondering if perhaps you could outline the problems or the difficulties with grants application and why you consider this $100,000 coming from the city so significant in offsetting that work.
Well, I'm sure many of you have had to do this, and even within your own jobs or your own personal lives. Those are time-consuming pieces, right? You know, if, for an example, writing a Trillium grant could take you 3 or 4 weeks to write it, and then the process continues, and then even the reporting and vetting of that, you're unsuccessful, have to reapply. There's a lot of conditions around monies, and often grants are limited to exciting new things or trying to create something, recreate the thing you're doing to find the money to do it. So grants are an elusive thing that give an appearance of sustainability and the myth of that, but they're really, you're constantly chasing it, and you're constantly reporting, and you're constantly trying to figure out how you're going to get the next one, or if the next one's available. And then in Trillium, they totally reform everything, and you're thinking, oh no, I'm back to square one. How do I do that? So, I mean, that would be probably a quarter of my time is pursuing, reporting, trying to find those other monies for our organization to do. I mean, even our summer camps, as I said, we pull in roughly, you know, $100,000, $120,000 in grants and partners, agency supports, and even that is discussing with those organizations, writing letters, doing talks to them, writing grants to HRDC Canada. You know, it's a myriad of things, and it's important and powerful, but in the end, it seems like not a winning game sometimes when you're a charitable organization. That's your life cycle always, that you're never able to really look too far into the future, because you're always in the present trying to find money for the next year, the next year, the next year. It doesn't mean we would stop if we had this money, but it would mean a little bit of breathing room and be able to, because after that, and as I said, in a young organization, in an organization with very little administrative is even the wrong word. It sounds like I'm sitting in a room just constantly like putting pay cards in and like sorting spreadsheets. What do we mean is community connectors. Dan and myself right now are those people in the organization, and we're often out in the community as well. I'm not sitting at a desk. I'm not pushing numbers or pushing money around, or we're not looking for another person to kind of go through documents. We're looking for people to be out there supporting the community on the ground.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate what your presentation, all of them have done in terms of a number of the statements that you've made. It clearly is obvious that people believe this is an investment in community, and now we need to decide how much bang for the buck we're prepared to give you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and part of our delegation tonight was this is a beautiful, large, and kind of wieldy animal sometimes, right? It's not easy to say we're saving puppies and we're finding puppies homes, right? It's community development, it's community relations. It doesn't come to a really quick soundbite very often. And although we could have had a much longer conversation, we tried to bring in those kind of different angles to the work so it's better understood, the capacity of it and the scope of the work that we're all doing together.
Thank you. And thank you that you probably would save puppies if it happened. Yeah. So.
I personally save puppies probably twice, 2 or 3 times a week
That's
myself.
What I hear.
So
that's what I hear.
This isn't about me, but I've been known to save the odd puppy and kitten. So
hashtag Brendan Puppy Saver is already up there.
So I think there was a question earlier if they were asking where to cut. If you want me to come into a room and help with that, I'm pretty good at working at a thin line of budget. So if you need that help, I'm happy to come in and use my charitable acumen to find that as well. So
okay, there goes my question for you. I got the last one on my list is Councillor Hofflin.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor Guthrie. So I think I'm going to withdraw my questions because we're leaving this conversation now with humor and the love in the room. And I feel through the questions that Councillor Alt answered, you expanded a lot of the answers, and I really appreciate that. So I'll withdraw my questions.
Okay. Well, that's a terrible segue to me because I have some questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. So, here are my questions that I've been just coming up with on the fly.
Let's go.
Would you stop trying to find other money if this was funded for you?
Absolutely not. We're always looking, and we're always searching and asking those questions. But
perfect.
It would probably allow us to look better and more deeply for other monies.
Sure, absolutely. I didn't know about the equity person or equity coordinator. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, she was an equity coordinator with us for about 1.5 years.
So I just wrote that down. I didn't know about and so was that a paid position? And if that person's not there anymore, would that funding then be available?
That would be part of the work that we would hope to do with monies we got. That was some of the money through Trillium and others that we had available to offer that position at that time. But we don't have the money for that right now. Which sounds pretty awful when people in our community are being treated inequitably. It's like, well, that's next. Just wait for that. So that feels like a very difficult conversation to have with people who are feeling inequitable treatment in our community.
No problem. So if you don't mind me re-asking again, just for clarity for myself. So you had a position and it was a paid position?
It was a paid position,
That position's not there anymore, meaning the funding
We don't.
is still available?
We didn't have the, that was a granted transitional funding that we no longer have.
You knew where I was going with that, right?
I think I did, and I answered it awkwardly.
I just found you the money, have a nice night. Okay.
I answered it very awkwardly, so my apologies.
You answered about the fundraising grants, so that will continue, thank you.
Of course.
And I think I believe that I know, because I've come to the your annual general meetings and we keep in touch and whatnot, but I think from a reporting back and accountability of what you do, can you just quickly talk about how you do that reporting back throughout the year?
To the city specifically?
Yep, to the citizens, absolutely. To the city, to us, yep. Yeah, because I think it's important that people know that not just the extra $100,000 they're asking for, but the current funding level that you get, there's still always a reporting back just to be accountable for the money that you're getting.
Well, I think we, if I am correct too, we were the first organization that there was a community benefit agreement with. And so we were kind of the pilot to that. And in that, I worked directly with city staff about how to report back on that document. And since then, since Alex Goss has taken over in that role, we continue to meet about how are those emerging needs of the city changing, and how can we best report back. So right now we've been reporting back twice a year, and I think that Alex and the staff team are moving to a once-a-year report. But I would say that Alex, as the community liaison from the city, sits on our partner panel. So he's, every couple months has been engaged in that process of that. We also have an organizational performance committee that's working on some of those performance metrics and evaluations, and Alex is sitting on that committee as well. So there's some great city contribution and oversight to that process.
Perfect. Thank you. I had some other ones, but they were already answered.
Okay.
So thank you very much. So there's no further questions, and thank you very much, and thank you to everyone that's coming. Now there is about, I think about 9 more delegations, and I just want to be respectful for all the people that came for this kind of section of the delegations tonight. Maybe this is just a good time to have a break, because maybe you want to stay and hear what the other 9 have to say. Maybe you want to go, and so. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Downer.
Just a suggestion that while the Neighbourhood Support Coalition people are here, if councillors are going to ask questions of staff,
sure,
we might do that before the break so that that they can hear what those questions are and answers are.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I like that.
And then take the break
before
we carry
on. I like that. Okay, so stay put, and what I'll do is I'll throw it back to council. For maybe any kind of staff-specific questions. I have one. If I could, okay, I'll start, and then I'll go to Councillor Gibson. Community benefit agreements already have a built-in increase in them every year, I think, and how much is that?
To the Mayor, yes, so our community benefit agreements all have cost of living increases built into them that come through in your base operating budget, and so they all would have that as part of their agreements, and that was already included in the base. Yep. So it is calculated each year depending on the, there's a federal, Dana might be able to say better what the actual
no, it's okay. My point is that there is a bump that all community benefit agreements do get. I'm not suggesting it's a lot or small or others. I'm just saying it's worked into the agreement, right?
Yes, it was 1.5% for 2018. Thank you, Dana.
Okay, 1.5. Okay. And how many community benefit agreements do we have in the city? Is it like
there are 13 in total.
13. Okay. And when was the last time that there was a agreement review or policy review in regards to community benefit agreements? Or do they happen one-offs, or is it more of a general, I really don't know, is it a general process that you would go through, or go ahead and answer.
So each would go through a review when they come up for renewal, and that has dependent on when because we didn't start all of them at the same time, and so Dana and Alex oversees them under Dana's direction, works through them and has a review every time they come up for renewal, depending on the individual agreement. Okay, so are some of them like 1 year and 10 year and 3? Can you just give me an idea of what they are? Then
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And what is the current one? I don't know what the current one is.
We have a 5-year agreement right now with the Guelph Neighborhood Coalition, Support Coalition. Our other agreements are between a 3 and 5 year, and we align to some of the strategic work that they may be doing in their own organization, if there's just to align to any changes that may need to or want to happen to their benefit.
Okay, then my last question then would be, when was the agreement with the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition going to be coming up then? Are they like in year 2 of 5 and they're coming to ask, or are they in year 4 right now and it's about to happen?
Thank you,
Mr. It's okay, Brendan.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you. This agreement will come due again for renewal in 2020.
Okay. Thanks, Council. Those are just off the top of my head. Now, I saw another hand go up, but I don't know who it was. Councillor Gibson? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I asked the same question to Brendan. I felt perhaps it's only respectful to ask staff the same question. Again, no surprises. We like to use that term around the horseshoe. Not knowing that this was coming forward, can staff speak to the process that they've been at with the Neighborhood Support Coalition to get us to tonight?
Sure, through the Mayor to Councillor Gibson. And so, yes, as Brendan mentioned, he did come forward and we were well aware of the request. We've had a number of meetings, Dana and Alex themselves, and then myself as well with Brendan and Aaron. So we were well aware that the request was coming forward. This was not the only CBA organization with whom we have a CBA who asked about possible increases beyond what was covered in their agreement. And we were working towards that 0.5% increase that Dana had to do for her department. So we were able to give the 1.5% increases and keep it within our 0.5, which meant we had to do some juggling, but we certainly couldn't do anything above that within the year. And so as we have done previously, there's precedent where you may recall the Rotary Club came forward to ask for additional money for fireworks that was outside of our process that we as staff have authority to oversee. They came and delegated to council. So in the same process, that was our recommendation. We certainly worked closely with the GNSC on how to position this request, but it was something that was above and beyond what we as staff could bring forward, and so felt the most appropriate way was for them to come and delegate to council on that.
Thank you very much. Councillor McKinnon, you don't have a question anymore? Okay. So then I only have one follow-up and then we'll be done. So because I now understand that there isn't sort of this grandiose policy framework in regards to all of our 13 CBAs, there would be, in conjunction with this ask, so I'm not trying to make it a substitute, just to be very clear, in conjunction with this ask, would there be any benefit to the city, to the CBAs, to council, to have a greater discussion about all CBAs than just the one that's in front of us tonight, and more of a policy framework type of discussion? Or because they're all 1, 3, 5 year one-off kind of contracts for all of them, that it's best just to leave it on an as-is basis as they all come up?
Just sort of initial thoughts, because they are all so distinct and different. I mean, they range from Remembrance Day with the Legion right up to this one, which is probably one of the largest. And they're all very, very distinct and different. I think that we do continue to handle them on a one-off. I would suggest that my guess is that if we were to do sort of a wholesale policy, there are other organizations with whom we have CBAs who might well also be seeking additional funds. Everybody is strapped, recognizing the demand and the community pressures. And so it's certainly not to say that we couldn't do a wholesale review, but at this point our approach is to handle them as they come up for renewal, and then within the agreement to do the cost of living that's outlined already. Okay, no, I understand. So thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Downer.
So just to follow up to that, I mean, if you did that kind of review through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, you'd have to consider impact on the community. Like, so there's some that have, like the art gallery that's part of that arguably would not have, I'm a supporter of the arts, I think they're great, but would they have as much impact on a community as the Neighborhood Support Coalition? I think there are things like that you would have to consider within that review, would you not?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Downer, absolutely, and without presuming to speak for any one of the other 12 organizations, I think they would all want to have voice in that, because I think they all have their own particular community benefit that they're bringing forward for Guelph.
The other thing I just want to check in with you, is there a certain amount of this funding that gets funneled right through, I think I've heard somewhere 77,000 goes right from the parenting child program into the community health center? I'm not quite sure. Is there some of it, so that the base funding is actually 300 and something rather than the 400? Is that?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Downer, yes, the base funding is just over $354,000, and then there is also a portion that is flowing through because of that program that you've mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Westing as well.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think we've done a very productive, very effective. Sometimes we say this isn't in place. We've probably done about 3/4 of a service review tonight, and that might be good. We generally say we should do a service review before we make budget recommendations, but we don't have to. We can make that in as we move. But I do think there's a question, and Councillor Downer and I just chatted about the priority when you compare something as critical as this, and not to say that the arts isn't critical from a from a perspective of importance to a community. But we get into this, who decides which is the most important place? And to some extent, when we make exceptions, which we have the right to do, and we may very well do it in this case, we're basically saying this is more important than the rest, because that's the definition of exception beyond the policy and the direction that we've given you in putting the budget together. Can you comment on that and what kind of pressure that we may be putting on you as we deal with that?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Wetstein, certainly there would be the risk that you may see more delegations coming forward in the future. That having been said, I also think there are going to be circumstances where the need may have changed from the time the CBA was first negotiated. And so if need has changed, or if the demands on an organization have changed, then that certainly would bear reflection and contemplation for whether there needs to be a change made. So it's absolutely a difficult question to answer, and because the range of the CBAs are so vast, and just a reminder really about what the CBAs, how they came to be, is this really was about these longer term agreements where it was deemed that another organization can provide service to the community better than we, the city, necessarily could by doing it ourselves. And so where we enter into these partnership arrangements that are longer term than an annual grant can address. But the need, I mean, I think our smallest CBA is only in the $1,000 range, and that's for the provision of the Remembrance Day service, and that's the Legion and our relationship with them. So they really have a very, very wide and varied need, and it would be difficult to try to compare the value of Remembrance Day in the community to the work of the GNSC. They're just very, very different, and so that's why I think my suggestion is it's difficult to then look at them. We're not comparing apples to apples, to be cliche. They're very, very different across the 13 organizations.
Last question. If this was to be approved by council, how does that affect their agreement? Does it strike as a new 5-year agreement, or is it an amendment for the next 3 years or for next 2 years?
To the Mayor and all of Council. So it would be an amendment to the existing agreement, and all of our CBAs do have provisions that they are subject to council decisions about funding, and so that would be within the existing agreement. We would just make that amendment, and so the term length on the agreement would not change.
Okay, good. Sorry for all the questions. Just want to make sure I'm getting all the clarity that's required. So, and that is it. So now you know what we all asked. And thank you very much for coming. So what we're going to do is it's basically 8 o'clock. Why don't we come back here at 10 minutes after 8? And that gives an opportunity, if you don't want to stay, if you've delegated already, you can leave. And then we'll come back and hear the remainder of our delegations. So thank you very much.